We have some lovely picture references here of lovely vultures, which are beautiful birds, and the idea is to make a vulture, a vulture capitalist, to go on top of this lovely sign which is here. Hello. And the idea is to go on top of this sign here, you see. This is the menu. Okay, so we have the menu, NHS, sign, pole, sign, pole, perch, and ingredients. The idea is to make it as lightweight as we possibly can, because it has to be carried high. With a load of offcuts of lovely foam here. This can be the feathers on the wings. And the body is made out of some kind of rubber filled with bin bags, so it's as light as possible. First, make your cross, then carry it. This is going to be what the vulture sits on with his claws.
That's better. Okay. Yeah.
About that height, I think. There we are in position. The support. That's my support of making the vulture. This is going to be the wings. Because they are slightly like that, the wings. See? Of course, one should have a vice really for this sort of thing. I've made these little bits of. I've cut these little bits of piping to stick here to act as a little things go in here, because without those it's a bit too straight. But with those it brings it round a bit like that. So, well, we're sort of getting there. Long neck. Well, we have a head and some wings. Pretty much in place. We could adjust the head to whichever angle we want. Although vultures are slightly more loaded. He looks a bit of a swan at the moment. I mean, an egret. But he's getting there. Okay, this is the feathers that will be going on here. Basically, build it up from the bottom up. So it's got a nice sort of solid body. Okay, I'm just cutting up bits of foam so I can stick them on the body. This is just a bin bag at the moment. It's got more bin bags inside it. Keep it as light as possible. And then these are going to go on top, kind of thing. Build it up, make it like feathers. Make them as big as possible, I think. Less gluing. It does move as well. What do you think of it so far? Rubbish. Hey, Jim Henson, I'm looking for a job.
Sorry. I'm sorry, since question time you have to pay.
You're blase now.
Yeah, it's right.
Yeah. Hello, Jim.
Excuse me.
Too close.
Just below him, coming out of his Parson's nose, they call it, isn't it? That's the weak spot.
it actually to get on the news.
So we're handing in this petition of 145,000 signatures of people against Clause 118, which is now Clause 119, but we're calling it the Hospital Closure Clause because it is to fast-track closures of hospitals across the whole country with no regard for people's opinions or the views of local clinicians. But first of all, I want to say something about failing hospitals. I don't think there's anything such thing as a failing hospital. This is language that the government is using. These are hospitals in deficit. They're in deficit, and many of them are really excellent hospitals. They're in deficit because the hospitals are being deliberately underfunded. There are the huge private finance initiative debts, which are saddling many hospitals, toxic debts that they can never repay. And there's also 9% budget cuts on top of that, with less and less money being paid to hospitals under the tariff which pays them. This legislation will allow an unelected bureaucrat to come in the area of a so-called failing hospital and decide to close any other hospital he or she wishes anywhere in the region with virtually no public consultation or clinical support. And we think that is a recipe for the destruction of the infrastructure of our NHS. So that's why this is not really about Lewisham anymore. Although we spearheaded this fight back, this is about the whole country and the whole of our NHS.
We are continuing our campaign to stop the closures at Charing Cross, Ealing, Hammersmith and Central Mid. But last week in Chiswick, somewhere we haven't organised, we had a meeting of 200 people against the hospital closures. People were being turned away. The week before that, we had a meeting in Hammersmith of over 200 people, again, really fighting the closures. And it makes a difference because we heard the head of NHS London, the medical director, saying they were losing the communications battle and they had to redouble because they were worried about how effective our campaign is.
That no matter what lies they tell us about how bad our NHS is, most people go by their own experiences, and their own experiences is that we get fantastic care from dedicated and committed staff. We really do need a national campaign that brings everybody together, and we need everybody fighting to defend this precious jewel that is our NHS.
It's vital we get the young to understand that at 20 you think you're going to live forever, you're going to be healthy forever, and next thing you're 40 and you start to break down, bodies break down. It's vital that a mother who gives birth, or a father obviously, and has a disabled child or an ill child can get the care and the attention.
Our NHS is under attack. Yesterday the government announced that they were going to dissolve the Mid-Staffs Hospital, saying that this was going to be safer for patients. Patient safety is the phrase they use when they're putting patients like us in danger.
So actual clinicians who know about hospitals and the experts are saying that to cope with the winter we need more beds and more investment in our hospitals. The TSA, who is backed up by private healthcare and is just in to do cuts, recommends the closure of hospitals.
I think Andy Burnham and Labour are saying that they will try to see if they can exempt the NHS from the US-EU free trade agreement. Remember, please don't believe them. These were the guys who gave you the £300 billion worth of PFI. If they do succeed in exempting the NHS will be the last thing that will be ready for corporate takeover after everything else.
I'm speaking from my local health campaign. We are Waltham Forest Saving Our NHS, and we, like many other campaigns, are trying to make sure that we're there wherever decisions are being made, and that's quite a complex process to find out where they are now in the NHS. We are challenging, we are asking questions, we are collating information, we are passing information on to our community and bringing it back. And we are at the Trust Board meetings, Clinical Commissioning Group meetings, etc.
So I'm part of the National Health Action Party, and I'm standing in the Euro elections in London. And what we're trying to to do is make the NHS an election issue, make like a referendum on what's happening to London's NHS, because it's across the whole of London, but also to raise the issue of exempting the NHS from the EU-US trade agreement, the TTIP agreement, which we think is vital to push that. Now we know that other parties too are beginning to become aware of that and start talking about it. That's great, but we feel we have to keep up that pressure. So I do hope that some of you at least will help with this, my campaign for the Euro elections. Thank you. Bye-bye.
As Phil said, I mean, the Lewisham campaign was a fantastic victory, but it was everybody's victory, wasn't it? Lewisham fought for everybody, and that's the strength we've got to carry into to the fight we now face. We are going to repeal the Health and Social Care Act 2000. To all of you today who campaigned for these things on over many years, I am clear, and as long as I do the job that I'm doing, you can have this straight from me. I am clear that markets are not the answer to 21st century care. The policy that I am building is about integration over fragmentation, collaboration over competition, people before profits, and that will be the National Health Service that the next Labour government, that will be the values on which the next Labour government restores the National Health Service. So thank you for being here, thank you for what you're doing. I mean, really, the Lewisham fight inspired everybody, and in many ways it's rippling out now because it's inspired everybody to fight for the NHS, and that's what it's got to do. It's got to give people confidence. People in Stafford who are feeling pretty demoralised today should take heart from Stafford, but people in other places too, Nuneaton, where the George Eliot is threatened with privatisation, all over the country. We need for people who are worried about their local hospital to take heart from what's been achieved in the Lewisham campaign, where the whole community comes together with excellent local support from MPs too, to really stand up for what matters and stand up for the community.
I'm delighted to say that in the last year we brought about another 8 local groups, so we're now up to 39 local groups from 30 about 2 years ago. And our local groups are very good at informing the public, because one of the problems is that the public don't understand, and they're given all these lies put over in the media about it. You do need to remember that solidarity is strength, and when you stand up and fight these people, you win.
How many people remember, very recently I wrote an article in Guardian, NHS at the brink of extinction, time to shout about it. And to my surprise, it wasn't a great article, but it was just a feeling in that particular article. That article within a week had 30,000 Facebook shares. It had over 100,000 views in the first week. So it was something that how strongly people feel that NHS is definitely at the brink of extinction if we don't do anything about it. And it's so heartening to see people here coming in this number and trying to support that we want to keep this NHS.
So, I think people are beginning to wake up. They're beginning to wake up to the fact that they want to sell these hospitals off so that they've got a privatisation-ready system with unprofitable A&Es, which no one can make a profit out of A&E, so that who cares about A&E? And let's keep the little, sort of sexy little units that they've built with PFI money, and there'll be, even more in the private sector. And we see that that's the way it's going. There's a local hospital in my area shut 10 years ago. People still talk about it. They still miss those services. That it used to provide respite and it used to provide review for old people. And now community care workers, community health workers are saying their patients are getting sicker because there just isn't the beds. We have one of the lowest beds in the Western world in the NHS.
What I want to really, a point I feel is really important to emphasise, which Jill's mentioned, is that the staff and their professional organisations and the unions have a really important role to play in challenging change proposals and in making sure that any decisions are good and safe and the best possible decisions, and in defending our services. And we know that when staff, hospital staff, unions, and the community join together, that is a very, very powerful force. We are also hearing increasingly around the country of trade union reps who do speak out who are being targeted. And Clause 118, or whatever it is going to be called, does represent, as Colin Humphries said in an article in The Guardian, this culture of diktat that we are now facing into the NHS and within the NHS. And it's a culture that has to be stopped. So I just want to say a little bit about how that feels when you feel like you're in a culture of diktat within the NHS. Care Quality Commission reported on our trust recently. It was one of the first to have this big in-depth inspection. And whilst they found that care was generally safe, they found staff are compassionate, caring and committed. There were a lot of concerns, and they, to quote from them, morale across the trust is low, with staff being uncertain of their future, with the trust and a perception of a closed culture and bullying. So there are major concerns about the bullying culture. Too many members of staff of all levels and across all sites came to us to express their concerns about being bullied. Many only agreed to speak with us if they could be anonymous. Now this culture is not compatible with healthcare. It's not compatible with a caring service, delivering care. It's not compatible with a safe service. It's not compatible with quality of care. It's not compatible with our human rights as health staff who want to passionately defend our services and make sure we can provide care. And it's not compatible with everybody's rights to receive that care.
Thank you.
We have to stop this culture. We have to change the situation. And it's up to us. Yeah.
I want to say that we've overturned this government 80 times.
Wow.
80 times. And what they did in response was to add another 40 Lib Dem and Tory peers. So it's a bit more difficult now. You'll remember one of the votes was 245 to 245 on the gagging bill. So we're having to work extra hard, but we're not going to give in, just as you're not going to give in. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for informing us and inspiring us and helping us to keep going.
What really makes me overjoyed is the turnout today for this event and its representative nature. Not only do we have people from north, south, east, west of London, but we have people from outside London, which is what we've always wanted to be able to do, is to make those links across the way. We've got people from the George Eliot Hospital Campaign, we've got people from Cambridgeshire, I think that's to do with the Peterborough Hospital issue. The people from Norfolk have been fighting on mental health issues in Norfolk. And as a campaign, we've also had contact with people from the Mid-Staffs campaign. They're not here today, I understand, but we've had those. So this, we need a movement. We're going to need a movement. People have talked about it. There won't be another, the NHS will not survive for another 5 years of a Tory or Tory coalition government. I think what works in Lewisham is that we've brought a united front of people, everybody who was fighting together. I do think that is the only way that we are going to get the kind of movement we need in this country, especially in England, because Scotland's got more sensible. It is the only way, broad united front, unity and determination to save our NHS. Yes. And we don't have long to do it. Thank you.